That's what they felt like. So my take on the Raiders is the division's really good, but it's not that good. I mean, record-wise, it's not the NFC North. And you thinking there's a saying, it takes a village. It doesn't really in the NFL. Chicago, I don't love Chicago's owners. I'm hot and cold on the GM and the team president. Love the coach. Really like the quarterback. It doesn't take a village. It takes rock stars. I know, I don't still love the Raiders ownership group. I don't know if Clint Kubiak will be a good coach. He's a great coordinator. I don't know if Fernando Mendoza is going to be better than Kirk Cousins. I know John Spytek, I would say this without hesitation and with conviction. I think they have one rock star right now in John Spytek. I think he's excellent. That I would bet on. I love their draft. I think he's sharp. I've watched every press conference. I think they have a rock star. So they don't need Kubiak to be Sean McVay, and they don't need Mendoza necessarily to be Matt Stafford. One of them, though, has to hit. If you told me Spytek and Kubiak is an A coach, Mendoza doesn't have to be an A quarterback. If he's B to B plus, they're a playoff team. Think about Texans, Houston Texans. Love the GM and love the coach. Right now, nobody loves the quarterback, and the ownership was kind of an eye roll. But we love the coach in Houston, and I think the GM's super sharp. Won a playoff game again this year in the quarterback conference. So that's what's interesting about the Raiders is I don't need Mendoza to be great if Clint Kubiak is. And I don't think he's McVay. I don't think he's Ben Johnson. He's probably not DeMeco Ryans. But if he's good, it doesn't take a village to make the playoffs repeatedly. I mean, go look at Cincinnati with Burrow. Burrow's a rock star. I'm not sure any of us still like the coach. None of us like the owner, right? We don't like the owner in Cincinnati. The GM is kind of the owner's guy. The coach, everybody's mild to cold on. We love the quarterback. Now, they're not making the playoffs the last couple of years, but they got to a Super Bowl. Fernando Mendoza's, I think it's going to be really fun to watch. I think everybody said he's Matt Ryan. What if he's just a little less talented Justin Herbert, a much less talented Andrew Luck, and a more talented Matt Ryan, which is kind of where I think he falls. By the way, he says, don't think, I'm not a nice guy. You think I'm all a nice guy all the time. I'm not.
Although I've came off as very humble and pretty fuzzy and warm, at the end of my Indiana career, when you have that equity, you're able to be like number 4 and number 12. And if you ask my teammates, that's stuff that I was. I wasn't always a nice guy. I was an a-hole sometimes because I wanted everyone to do their 1/11th, everyone to do their job, hold everyone to a high standard.
Yeah. All right. There's a lot to untangle here, and I keep finding myself genuinely thrilled to discuss the Raiders. Honestly, real talk, I'm being completely upfront. You all know I always try to be as transparent as possible. I'm constantly searching for clips, and no matter which program it is, whether I'm browsing online or scanning through content, a lot of the time you're just looking for material that stands out. You see a team mentioned, like, oh, they're discussing the Rams, and then you have to dig in and see what exactly they're saying, because I never want to know what a clip contains before I hit record. But the instant I spot the Raiders logo, I immediately think, make that a Raiders clip. Doesn't matter what the topic is. Doesn't matter at all. Just turn it into a clip. So my eyes light up. However, I don't always know whether it's going to be interesting or whether there's actually something worth breaking down. And there definitely is more to break down, which is why the Raiders have been so fantastic, because again, sometimes during the offseason it's just a grind. You find yourself asking, what are we even talking about? We're just going in circles. Like, did the Cowboys have a great draft? Yes. And then, okay. Did the Cowboys have a great draft? Yes again. A.J. Brown getting traded from the Eagles? Yes. Is A.J. Brown getting traded from the Eagles? Yes. So it's just, okay. So I continue to be really fired up. And Raiders fans, you've been absolutely wonderful showing up and watching these videos. I have to ask you to keep doing it. Please don't forget to subscribe and watch the full-length video. I'm at a point now where we're about 4 months away from the season kicking off. I'm trying so hard to reach 100,000 subscribers by the start of the season. It's a massive, massive goal, but when you all watch the full video and subscribe while watching at the same time, this is what happens. The crazy thing is that if we can just add a few thousand subscribers from each team's fanbase, we're essentially there. And again, this isn't about chasing views. It isn't about chasing subscribers. It's about producing content that people genuinely want to watch so we can keep having the best possible conversations, the most unbiased, grounded discussions about the Las Vegas Raiders. What I'm really ultimately trying to accomplish here by growing subscribers and views isn't just getting 1 million views per video or something. It's trying to raise the floor more than anything else. And that transitions perfectly into this discussion. There are so many teams out there right now, and the Raiders in particular, where I just think, if you simply take care of the floor, you are in such an incredible position. Such an incredible position. And then if you also elevate the ceiling, you're set up to be historically great. So when you look at a team like the Raiders, Colin has been talking about how it's not that hard in the NFL, and leading into the clip he was discussing how teams can turn things around in the snap of a finger. And I've mentioned this to you all before. I referenced the Texans. I referenced the Commanders, and I said, listen, a lot of things had to go their way for those positive outcomes to happen. A lot of things needed to break in their favor. And I walked through those factors, and I won't waste your time repeating them. But now he's also bringing up the Chicago Bears as well. Even the Bears with Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, 1 or 2 years into that partnership, Williams wasn't a full rookie. Ben Johnson not only goes to the Bears, but that also simultaneously weakens the Lions, who are in the same division, right? The Packers, Micah Parsons gets hurt, that whole defense gets injured, they regress. And the Minnesota Vikings, I think each of their quarterbacks played like 4 games or something? It was just an absolute disaster. So if the Lions were still as great as they had been, and the Bears improved, but Ben Johnson hadn't left the Lions, I'm confident the Lions would have been better. If Micah just doesn't get injured, right? So even for a team that was essentially 1 play away from reaching the NFC Championship game, a lot still had to go their way. They still needed some crazy breaks against the Giants, against the Bengals, right? So even the teams that successfully turned things around still required many circumstances to fall in their favor. And now, the question is, again, you're going up against the Chiefs. You're going up against the Chargers. You're going up against the Broncos. So it's like, okay. But the reality is this. If you have a great coach, and if you have a general manager who can consistently build rosters, build strong, high-quality rosters, then it doesn't matter who your quarterback is, or who you give a $200 million contract, or $200 million contract, or $140 million, or who your top receiver is. As long as you can consistently build good enough rosters, that floor is there, and your coach is good enough, you will be a competitive team year after year after year after year. And again, you have to demonstrate that you can keep doing it. That's why someone like Howie Roseman with the Eagles, I think, deserves so much respect, even more respect than, say, the Chiefs front office or whatever, because he's built multiple Super Bowl winning rosters with completely different coaching staffs, completely different quarterbacks. That's incredible. The Chiefs have not done that. It's been Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. That's it. That's it. The Chargers still haven't pulled it off. The Broncos haven't pulled it off, right? So it's just, and we're talking about, oh, the Seahawks, they're so great, and I'm like, let me see you do it again. Right? The Rams, let me see you fire Sean McVay, get rid of Matthew Stafford, and build another Super Bowl winning roster. Go ahead. So this stuff is hard. Even if you've been able to build great teams in the past and make some clever moves and pull some great strings, the question is, can you keep moving forward in that regard? If you can, then you will simply be one of the most consistent teams out there. And if you are consistent in the NFL, then you are going to be dangerous. You are going to be dangerous. It will ebb and flow based on smaller things like who your quarterback is and how great your quarterback truly is. And that's why, for me, this is what I said before, I am convinced that if we just get a Kirk Cousins, or however Colin wants to phrase it, like a better Matt Ryan, or a slightly worse version of Justin Herbert or Andrew Luck, I think that's what he said, and if even those things are true, then again, the Raiders will consistently be competitive. But if Mendoza truly can be, okay, so we have so many quarterbacks who float in and out. I think we have this top 10 list that oftentimes actually includes 15 quarterbacks. And that's why we're always arguing. We say things like, you're leaving Purdy out? Jalen Hurts can't be there, his team is too good. Right? It's always that we know the collection of quarterbacks that without a shadow of a doubt are elite, are top quarterbacks. Then really it's everyone else who is always floating in and out, in and out. Is Trevor Lawrence a top 10 quarterback? I don't know. One season he is, one season he's not. Is Jalen Hurts? I don't know. One season he is, one season he's not. Brock Purdy. Baker Mayfield, in and out, in and out. And then there are quarterbacks that people completely forget about. Jared Goff. Anytime people are discussing who the great quarterbacks are in the NFL, Jared Goff has consistently been great in the NFL season after season after season. Yet nobody except Lions fans is saying, Jared Goff isn't getting enough respect. Right? No one really talks about him at all, honestly. They just don't. That's the reality. I'm not making deep dives, and I include myself here, I'm not making all these deep dives about how special Jared Goff really is. That's just how it works, right? If he played for the Philadelphia Eagles, or the Rams, or the Chiefs, man, that would probably change. But it is what it is. And the Lions are still wildly popular. It's a weird thing that happens in the NFL, why some quarterbacks get so much attention, no matter how great, how average, or how bad they are. It's just fascinating to me. The reality is, if Mendoza just becomes a quarterback that we don't have to keep moving in and out of the conversation, he doesn't have to be rooted in the top 3 or top 4 of that category that we always name, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. He doesn't even have to be that. But if he's just a no-doubter, when we all just say, oh yeah, well, he's clearly a top quarterback, we know Mendoza is, that redefines the franchise for the next 10 plus years. That's what's so exciting about these types of prospects. Because why don't need to be a Mahomes? They don't need to be a Tom Brady. They don't need to be a Josh Allen. They don't need to be that. When you are a well-run franchise, and you have a quarterback that you just know year after year is going to be really good, and that's all you have, just leave it at that, he's going to be really good, then you are such a dangerous team because you are competitive year after year when you combine that with the coach and the GM. And then the rest comes down to, do you get it done in the playoffs, right? Or do you make those critical plays? And we've seen Mendoza make those plays. We've seen him elevate and do that. Now, can he do it in the NFL? Can he do it on the road in an AFC championship game? I don't know. Alright, I hope he can. I believe he can. But I try to base my statements often on factual evidence rather than just saying, well, I know Mendoza will ball out in the Super Bowl, look what he did in the national championship. I'm like, well, those are technically different things. So I'm not going to just say that for the sake of saying it. But you have to feel good about that potential. You have to feel good about what you've seen in the past, even if it was in college. And so, the stakes, I've said this before, I just love when stakes matter. And the stakes for this type of situation carry such massive repercussions. Because I had another aha moment where I realized we really are having a changing of the guard to a degree. We are really are, in terms of quarterbacks and teams. And I think the NFL happens fast and slow at the same time. And it's so easy to just fall into this pattern. And again, I think we've had this for the last 5 or 6 years, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, the Ravens, the Bills, and so on, we just keep going and going. And I get it. They deserve it. They're elite, they're special, they're consistently great, consistently competitive. And no matter what, I don't care what the Bengals have been doing. You know what? You're not going to love having to face them in the wildcard round or in your division. You're not going to say, oh, I can't wait to play Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase. I don't care how bad their defense is, what their offensive line looks like, doesn't matter. It's going to be a tough game. Lamar Jackson, oh, well he always chokes in the playoffs. Sure. But it's not going to be an easy game. He's going to break your back multiple times. So no matter what they've truly achieved or not, it's dangerous. It is the definition of dangerous. But then you kind of get reawakened, right? You see the Seattle Seahawks win a Super Bowl and you're like, whoa, okay. You see the New England Patriots get to the Super Bowl and you're like, oh, okay. You see the Denver Broncos reach the AFC Championship game and you're like, alright. And you realize no one's really talked about the Texans as much, but they keep winning playoff games every single year. And you're like, oh, okay. The Chicago Bears hire Ben Johnson and you're like, oh, wow. They almost took down the Rams. The Rams were supposed to win the Super Bowl. Then the Rams lose in the NFC Championship game and you're like, oh. The Kansas City Chiefs don't even make the playoffs, and you're like, oh, wow. The Colts were the #1 seed, about to take over the NFL, nope, they don't even make the playoffs. You realize there's always room to enter that conversation, to enter that equation. And then when you really look around, you notice that the teams and players that were taking up a lot of space, it's becoming more and more fragile. The Chiefs, it was undeniable. It didn't matter what the story was. It didn't matter who was injured. They were getting to the playoffs. They were going to be competitive. That did not happen. Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, they only lose to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. No, they lost to the Denver Broncos. The Baltimore Ravens, yeah, they struggle in the playoffs sometimes, but you know they're going to take care of business. No, they lost to the Steelers and didn't make the playoffs, right? The Cincinnati Bengals will eventually get this thing going. Not so sure about that. Not so sure about that. And everyone's convinced, well, the New England Patriots are ready to go. You know, maybe. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. Right? Yeah, I believe in the Eagles and everything they've done, and I love the Desies. Ions they've made, but do they get back to a Super Bowl within the next couple of years? I don't know. So even the most guaranteed things we had in the NFL, those are no longer quite guarantees. They're just not. They're just not. Now, that can change in a second. That can change for a season. The Bills, the Chiefs, etc., they can become guarantees again for another year or two or whatever. But it just doesn't quite feel like it used to. And so right now, especially when I'm looking around the league and observing what I see, it's just that if you can be consistent, you don't even have to be consistently great, you don't even have to be consistently elite, you don't even have to be consistently special. If you can just be consistent, you are going to be a dangerous team by definition. You are going to be a team that can be one play away from reaching the AFC Championship game, one play away from reaching the Super Bowl. Now again, do you win the Super Bowl? Do you really get it done? Do you make it to multiple AFC Championship games in a row and all of that? That will ultimately come down to how special Kubiak is, how special Mendoza is. Do you elevate? Right? And then you just have to wait and see how it plays out. But right now, on a silver platter for the Raiders to just be competitive and just be consistent year after year after year, it's right there for them. The floor is right there for them. And when you've been a team that has been suffering and struggling for oh long, the idea that you can just enter this equation and be consistently competitive, consistently competing, and your floor is no longer in the literal sewers, I just continue to find that incredibly exciting and such an awesome place to be in. And then the idea that it can be even higher, right? That you're almost being too gentle with the expectations, that the expectations can be raised even more. It just becomes such an exciting prospect. And drafting a quarterback like Mendoza first overall is the absolute perfect representation, because he represents the ultimate potential. If this guy can be great, then the Raiders are great for a decade or more, however long quarterbacks play these days in their prime. Let's say a decade, 10 years. It changes everything. It changes everything, and it has such massive consequences because it becomes direct. Right now the Broncos feel that way, and the Raiders can be so difficult for that. Same with the Chargers, same with the Chiefs. The Chiefs are saying, we're trying to get back. We're going to rebuild our dynasty. And then you have the Raiders having a say and saying, not so fast. Even at the bare minimum, we have the ability to rob you of the #1 seed. Now you have to go on the road. That has devastating consequences, even something as small as that. So it has massive, legacy-defining repercussions. And so where this all ends up landing, again, to me the prospect is just so exciting and so wild. Jalen Hurts, this is honestly probably one of the best examples. Truly. And people don't realize it, but it is. And I kind of stumbled upon it because of all the Jalen Hurts videos I've been making recently about people saying, "Oh, Jalen Hurts holds his team back." And then when I looked into it, I realized there was no other quarterback for the Eagles to draft over those years. They were certainly never going to have a top 2 pick or something like that, right? So they weren't going to be able to draft a Caleb Williams. So when you actually look at who they realistically could have drafted, or who was available in free agency, nobody else. There was nobody else. It's not like they could have had Josh Allen in the 2nd round if only they had done something different. No situation like that exists. So even someone like Jalen Hurts, who is obviously really controversial and people either love or hate or whatever it may be, just the fact that they got Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round is the direct reason why they've been able to be as great as they are, reach multiple Super Bowls, take down the Kansas City Chiefs, win the Super Bowl, etc. And that is not a number 1 overall pick. That is not Josh Allen. That is not Lamar Jackson. That is not Patrick Mahomes. It's none of that. And yet, if they had not done that, there is no other magical situation they would have found themselves in. There's no other scenario where you could say, well, they would have gotten, who? It doesn't exist. It simply does not exist. There was no other quarterback for them to draft who would have been great, none. And maybe some of the other options they could have technically, possibly had, the best case scenario would have been like Tua. And I don't know if Tua wins Super Bowls with that team. Probably not. So that's technically the best case scenario for the Eagles if they had, for whatever reason, had such a bad season that they could draft at 6 or 7 or whatever. So yeah. That's what happens. That's what's at stake. And you don't always see it as clearly when you're drafting at the top, and you get so lost in the number 1 overall pick, 2nd overall pick, generational talent, best quarterback. Would they trade back? If Caleb Williams or another quarterback was available last year, would he be going number 1? Everything just gets so clouded. And it's simply that if you're a well-functioning team, if you're a well-run team, and you can consistently build the roster, have the right coaching, you can go a long way. You can go a long way. And if you hit with that quarterback, snap of the fingers. Mendoza has momentum, but it's more like questioned momentum. So I don't know, it's hard to put my finger on it, but it's really fascinating. And considering he's going to a team like the Raiders and who they've been, it's definitely a harder hit than, say, the closest example would be Cam Ward. It's a harder hit than Cam Ward going to the Titans. The Raiders just seem have more staying power with the media, going up against the Chiefs, the Broncos, and the Chargers, right? You're talking about iconic coaches, hardball quarterbacks who are elevated, Herbert obviously, Mahomes, Sean Payton. So in a lot of ways, those games are football royalty right now in a way that the Titans and the Colts are just not. So yeah. The spotlight is on. It's magnified. And the stakes are through the roof. So let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get into some discussions. Get into some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you be part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.